CBS News Magazine's 60 Minutes has done something no local TV outlet has ever been able to do. They scored a lengthy sit-down with Cardinal Sean O'Malley. Correspondent Nora O'Donnell said it took them a year to negotiate the deal, but in the end, O'Malley agreed and was blunt about everything from the child sex abuse scandal to the Vatican's investigation of American nuns. But the portion of the interview making the biggest news, his position on ordaining women. 60 Minutes correspondent Nora O'Donnell first raised the issue of women in the church by asking about the Vatican's investigation into a group of American nuns for their progressive position on gay rights, abortion, and women ordination.
It looked like a crackdown from men at the Vatican on
a disaster.
O'Malley went on to say that soon women will play a more prominent role at the Vatican. But on the issue of ordination, he remained steadfast.
Not everyone needs to be ordained to have that important role in the life of the church.
But they can't preach, they can't administer the sacraments.
Well, they have other very important roles.
But in spite of that, does the exclusion of women seem at all immoral?
Well, Christ would never ask us to do something immoral.
You wouldn't exclude someone based on race, but yet you do exclude people based on gender.
Well, it's a matter of vocation and what God has given to us. And this is, if I were founding a church, I'd love to have women priests. But Christ founded it, and what he has given us is something different.
My next guest took a special interest in O'Malley's remarks about women. Karen King teaches at Harvard Divinity School. She made waves in the Catholic Church when she argued that an ancient text suggested Jesus had a wife. And Ernie Colomati is a religious studies professor at Regis College. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
When he said that Christ would never ask you to do anything immoral, I mean, there were things that were condoned in that age, including slavery, that no one necessarily condoned, but it was just part of life. And I don't know how the Cardinal can speak for Christ now. I mean, maybe he would change his mind. I think, I don't know how you feel, but a more honest answer might have been, this is the way we like it.
I don't know what he would have said in some sense more honestly, but it certainly is the case that in the early church and in the New Testament, there are a lot of things that are accepted. You mentioned slavery. Mm-hmm. It was one of them. But the New Testament also, very interestingly, in the Gospel of John, for example, shows that Jesus gave to Mary Magdalene. She was the first one to see the resurrected Jesus in the Gospel of John, and he commissions her to go forth and tell the other apostles about the resurrection. So in some ways, that makes her the first apostle to the apostle. Or you have the book of Romans, for example, that talks about this woman, Eunia, who is called foremost among the apostles. So there are cases already in the New Testament, in the ministry of Jesus or in the ministry of Paul, these major figures where women are playing these roles of apostles.
Also, Ernie, I mean, I'm not a student of the Bible, but is there anything in there that explicitly says women shall never be ordained, women shall never give the sacraments?
No. And it's fascinating, and very few people are aware of it because so much time has passed. Mm-hmm. In 1976, the Pontifical Biblical Commission, the Papal Biblical Commission, dealing with the New Testament, by an overwhelming majority said, there appears to be nothing in Scripture that excludes women from the presbyterate. In other words, what they basically were advising Pope Paul VI at that time was that, in fact, based solely on Scripture, you cannot exclude women. So that, in fact, to claim that the New Testament is an obstacle to ordination seems to be rejected by some of the finest authorities on Scripture in our own history. But the appeal then would go beyond saying the tradition argues against it, or we have continually had this as our practice, and the authority of the Church stands behind it. But the real question is it correct to say that we know definitively that the will of Jesus Christ was to exclude women, and there is nothing, according to biblical scholars, to suggest that.
So, Karen, the Catholic Church isn't the only one that excludes women from the highest authority, but
that's right, yeah.
I mean, there is sort of an assumption that women are secondary to men. I mean, is that something we should, I mean, should we take that as what the meaning is here?
We should take that as a problem, and I think we should definitely see it at work. Cardinal O'Malley quite rightly pointed out that women in the Catholic Church play very important roles.
He said running Catholic charities. I mean, that's
right.
different.
Yeah.
That's not being an authority in the church.
Exactly, and you know, women have always played these really important roles. In some ways, they've been the people in the pew, the people who really carried things through. But without the leadership, without the authority, and for the Catholic Church really to be able to give the sacraments, to be able to preach, these are major, major roles. And they are roles that are being excluded. So it is a problem.
You know, one interesting thing was, at least you talked about it. I have to say that was, so John Allen from the Boston Globe has been writing about this. I just have a quote from him, see if you agree with this.
Sure.
He wrote on Saturday, he said, many church watchers will be tempted to suppose that O'Malley has been emboldened by Pope Francis. And there's probably some truth to that. O'Malley is the American cardinal whom Francis knows best, and he is the lone American to sit on the Pope's Council of 9 cardinal advisors from around the world. So he did speak very frankly about we should say he did very frankly about the church sex abuse, very frankly about the Kansas City Cardinal Bishop who needs to be removed.
Bishop Finn, yes.
Bishop Finn. So there's some things that he said that he might not have. So do you think he has been emboldened?
Oh, there's no doubt. Even he indicated the atmosphere in the Roman Church has changed. I refer to it, Emily, as there's so much more oxygen. The air is so full and freer, so that what could not be publicly talked about in an age very recent to our own is now been lifted. And so we won't see all-out, drag-out battles, but I think you see it in the modeled by Pope Francis, who I thought at the end of the synod with the bishops said something remarkable. He challenged the bishops to think of how God is thinking and bringing us to new things. Now, that's a very large generic statement, but for a church that prizes traditions so deeply and richly, to say that God is bringing us to new things.
Yes.
And he is not simply style. I reject the notion that this is a man simply of new style. There's already been substance.
Do you agree with that, Karen? New thinking? He mentioned homosexuality.
Yeah.
He said not necessarily to embrace it, but accept it.
Well, what I love about Pope Francis is the way that he has repositioned concern away from certain kinds of social issues and repositioned the church toward issues about the poor, about caring more broadly. And one can only, be very happy about that. What disappointed me in Cardinal O'Malley's remarks that made me less hopeful about things, where he made a comment that, priests cannot be priests cannot be mothers. He said, exactly, and
it's physiological.
And it made me think, well, we're still in this mode where we're thinking, well, not everybody does everything. But the question is, of course, that priests can't be fathers either. Yeah. So reproductive roles, are not belonging to the priesthood. Yeah. But that doesn't exclude women. And the point is. My point that I'm trying to make is simply that I don't really see a breakthrough in getting new understanding, about the ways in which women are positioned secondarily.
Not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Karen King, Ernie Coleman,
thank
you so
you
much for coming. Appreciate it.